Will, at the time of this recording, it is January 2nd. It is a miracle the 3 of us are here and realize it's a work day. It is also
Mhm.
a miracle that we got off of our, offline conversation of you and Joe totally geeking out. And so the reason why we wanted to record today is because it's the new year and we don't want solopreneurs to waste their time with things they don't need to be wasting their time with.
Oh my gosh, yes.
2025 should be the year of efficiency and getting rid of those time wasters. So let's start there. What are the most common time wasting tasks you see solopreneurs struggling with, and how can they eliminate them for this new year?
I love that. So, you used one of my favorite keywords. Automate, delegate, eliminate is my framework for solopreneurs to systematically scale. And one of the things that I learned as a solopreneur is if I don't figure out how to take the locus of control from right here in front of me and hand it out to people around me, then I don't actually grow at all. And many people think, well, I'm a solopreneur. The whole point is that I'm solo. And what I learned is you can actually hire people to come in and do things for you and still remain a solopreneur and still be the only one who's in there. There's designers, there's virtual assistants, I have a program I call Entrepreneur's Apprentice, where I actually pair you with a young entrepreneur who basically clones you and does a whole bunch of stuff. So to answer your question more directly, the biggest time wasters I see, honestly, is email. And I see people. This is a classic. I actually literally was talking to one of my clients last week, and he was like, "Yeah, I spend hours and hours and hours on email. And if I don't check my email, I don't make business. If I don't, I just get stuck in there." And I said, "Okay, I have a question for you. If I were to be on a conversation with you, like a podcast, like this one, and a really good idea came up, where would you write that idea down?" And he said, "Oh, I'd probably email it to myself." Hold on. You're gonna email it to yourself. Do you realize you just gave every spammer on the planet access to your to-do list? Because that's what you're using your email as. When you email yourself that good idea, you're telling your brain good things are inside that inbox. Go go make sure you do everything inside that inbox. But you're also allowing every single spammer on the planet to send you
into
an
your brain.
email.
Yeah.
Well,
To
that's
like
terrifying. Well, I have done that in the past, and it's funny because I have like an app that I use on my phone. But if it's like a quick thought, I'm like, oh, I'll email it to myself. But I will never do that again because I
so
didn't.
so that's the key is you have to find a way to give yourself permission not to use your inbox as your to-do list. If you're doing that right now as a solopreneur, stop. You should not be using your inbox as your to-do list. Like you got a contract you got to get done today, that should go on a separate location for your to-do list.
Like a
Should
to-do
not
list.
go it should go in Trello or in ClickUp. Both of those have free plans that would work for solopreneurs for months, years before they needed to pay for the paid subscriptions of either one of those platforms. And no, I don't, I'm not giving you my link to go sign up, and it's use something else.
Do you know who Cal
That's my
Newport
biggest.
is? Have you ever heard of Cal
Cal
Newport?
Newport.
He's a
No.
professor at, I think, Georgetown, but he wrote a book called A World Without Email, basically arguing that it's the biggest productivity suck, ever invented. And I agree.
Oh, the author of Deep Work. Okay, yeah,
Yes, 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 yes.
I've
Yep.
heard of Deep Work. So, yeah, no, I am a huge fan of that idea of like just peel back those layers. I actually haven't checked my email in years. And the reason I don't check my email is because I have a VA who has like a 97-page document that she knows exactly what to do with every single email that comes through my inbox and which ones need to surface to me. So you will get to a point where you can systematically delegate that and no longer have it be something that you're focused on. But it's something that takes time.
I've
And
been
the
building an
biggest
app for years and trying to use, we have a patent on using AI for this kind
Ooh.
of thing. So
Uh,
figuring out which
Well,
emails,
Joe, I wanna come try your app.
yeah,
let's
it's
say
got
no
it's
more.
got work to do. It's got work to do. But anyway,
Well, let
um,
me. So you say you haven't looked at email in years.
Mhm.
What do you and your VA use, and how does she like even for this interview? I sent you an email, and I was like, "Hey, like looking forward to our chat tomorrow." Blah 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 blah. How did you get that information?
Great question. Great question. So what happens is, my assistant goes through my inbox, and she actually gets on at two different times. So she gets on 2 hours before I wake up, and then she stays on for 2 hours. And then we actually broke her shift up. She's over in the Philippines. And so for her, it was nicer from a scheduling perspective to take a second 4 hour shift and put it late in her evening, which is end of my day. So like 4 p.m. my time until 8 p.m. my time. So she works outside of the times that I'm generally working, which in some ways is awesome, in some ways drives me crazy. Because on the one hand, like she's sending me messages, I got to figure out how to mute that channel a little bit more, like my 4 to 8, because that's kind of when I'm hanging out with family. But on the other hand, I love it because all of the tasks that I queue up during the day, she just pounds them out. So whether it's creating a proposal or whatever else. So to answer your question directly, um, we actually use Slack. And what we do in Slack is there's an email to channel feature. So if you go into a Slack channel, if you haven't heard of Slack, it's a really cool chat system. Um, Internal communication for your team should never, ever, 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 ever be via email. Like you should just email internal communication to your team. There's no faster way to get lost in threads and all of the other crazy, stupid stuff that's there. So use Slack for internal communication. Inside the Slack channel, there's an integration button you can turn on email, and it creates a unique email associated with that Slack channel. Then everything that's forwarded to that specific spot, the entire email thread, all of the forwards, all of the context, all of the text, even the attachments go to that Slack channel. And then I can go to that message inside the Slack channel and hit reply, and I can voice type. Like I can literally hit the voice, like the record button, and it records audio of my voice, transcribes it at the same time, and I say, okay, this is what I want to say back to this person. And I also want you to do this, that, and the other. And I hit stop, and she picks up that recording, the transcript, runs it through ChatGPT to make sure that it's, coming out clear and it matches my voice and all of that. And then she replies to that person. So the only place I check is Slack and go dig into that.
I gotta jump in here because I truly hate Slack. I feel like
Mm.
Slack is email on steroids. But I think what you're saying here is you've got a very limited group of people that you're using Slack with. Like it sounds like one person.
It's actually interesting. So I have found that Slack can be a black hole, and it can really suck you in. The trick that I've found with Slack is making sure that the channels and the things that are happening inside Slack are very delineated. So all of your specific channels have I have a channel for the team, and a channel for when we're talking about apprentice success, and a channel for when we're talking about sales, and a channel for when we're talking about those different other pieces. My experience has been, the thing I like about Slack is I can control who's in there, right? So I have just my internal teammates. And I've got probably 5 or 6 internal teammates that we've got working on different pieces of what's there. And we put them in there. We have a channel that has all the apprentices in it. There's many of them, and those apprentices only have access to that 1 or 2 channels. And so I can control what I'm seeing. And then in the left-hand side of the bar, I can move those channels around. So I only have to pay attention to the stuff that's actually super relevant and urgent to me.
Okay. It's just tricky. It's tricky though, because I think a lot of times it just becomes an email that actually screams for an immediate response. because it's like if you're not controlling, your notifications, it's like
Yep.
blink, 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 blink. And I used it for a while with the team, and I just said no. And I
Got it.
still use it a tiny bit, but it's like very limited. There's like
So
literally 3 people.
no, I love that. And the reason, so what you're describing right there, using it in a limited fashion, and I think there's a big part of this. So I don't know if you heard this, but Zapier, so they're a ginormous automation company, right? That didn't used to be ginormous. They were very small. I applied to be the 7th member of their team like 10 years ago. And Wade sent me an email and said, "You're just not enough of a programmer, Will. I don't, we can't, we need people who can program on our team right now. Everybody's got to program." And it's funny because then, 5 years later, they offered me a job and it was too late. I had already started another company. But the short version of why I bring up Zapier is Slack actually developed a feature that turns off the knowing when someone else is typing. So Slack has this feature where if I'm replying to someone, it says so and so is replying or so and so is replying, and so you sit there and wait for their.
Mm-hmm.
They have a feature where you can turn that off. So once that's off, it becomes more of a true asynchronous communication. So that's one recommendation I'd give you if you ever implemented it in another team. The second thing I would say is we established a whole bunch of standard like SLAs, like agreements, service level agreements for the different channels of communication. So if you want my attention right now, you're going to send me a WhatsApp message.
Right. Yep.
Guess who has access to my WhatsApp? Nobody. like just those key people. And they know if they put something in WhatsApp, I'm gonna look at that every hour or so throughout the day in between my meetings, looking at stuff. If you want something by the end of the day, check Slack, because I do a cleanup of Slack every day.
Right.
Where I spend a half an hour to an hour pounding it out and get everything else there. And then the last one, send me an email, and I probably won't see it in there because my assistant will go through and make sure that it shows up in Slack. And if you send me an email, my assistant knows within the next 2 to 3 business days, that's gotta be looked at. If it's a client email, probably gotta look at more like 24 hours. And she kind of massages that into reality.
So you also then set expectations with your clients that you're not going to be one of these people that responds to an email within 5 minutes,
Yes.
because a lot of people have that expectation.
Well, and if I have a client who's in that boat and I sense that they're sending me an email and then they're sending me another email in 10 minutes and then they're sending me another email in 15 minutes, I usually reply and say, I really appreciate how important. First, validate. Alex Hormozy said there can only be one person in the angry boat. Okay. So validate the way that person is feeling. And so when he had an angry customer and he came in and said, "I'm so angry that this button is in the wrong place." And the angry customer is like, "Oh, okay, I'm no longer as angry as I was before." And the reason she wasn't angry is because she was validated, right? Because she could see, okay, he's angry, I'm angry, we understand each other. Now we're going to fix this. So first validate. Hey, I can see you're kind of poking at this like email thing. And I can understand how this thing you're talking about is urgent. I wonder if we couldn't let's jump on a 5-minute phone call and let's just make sure that we're both on the same page as far as the urgency here. And on that 5-minute phone call, I'm going to set some expectations. I'm going to say, look, if you want a less than 5-minute response from me, you've got to pay a higher price. Period. And the only channel I've opened up to you right now is email. If you want access to me via a Slack channel that's like a 24-hour response, here's the price tag. If you want access to me within the hour, here's the price tag. So like I do that level of service, but that's not what you're currently paying for. And I apologize if that's not what you anticipated with what's here. Can you help me understand? Does this need to be done right now? And most of the time they're like, "No, I just got excited about getting started. And I was thinking that maybe you'd be checking your email as much as me." And then I ask them that question. Tell me, if I were to give you a really good idea right now, where would you put it? Oh, I'd probably send it to my email. So you're one of those guys that gives spammers access to your to-do list. And we have that conversation. I educate, and they're like, oh, maybe email shouldn't be a 5-minute response thing. So it's about education.
Education. Well, it sounds like you just have so many great processes in place too, and you've really thought through how to work on your business to make it as efficient as possible. Can you elaborate? You have like a 15-1-1-5 principle,
Yes.
like automation
Yes.
efficiency. What is that?
Love it. So 15115 is one of my favorite things. The reason that I created 15115 is I started automating stuff before automation became a buzzword. I started, like, I put up a billboard and I own the domain name dataautomation.com. That was the first startup we created. They still automate a lot of stuff for e-commerce sellers. We put someone else in charge, and I'm off doing other stuff now. But I was doing this, like I said, back before automation was cool, before AI had ever been heard of, before any of this was really like, oh man, maybe computers could do that for me. I was digging into that 10 years ago. And so I had talked to probably 300 people. And the most common question they were coming to me with was, what can I automate, Will? And I'd be like, I don't know. Tell me about your business. Tell me about what you're doing. What are you doing on a regular basis? And I started to realize, oh, there's a threshold. So 15115 is all about the threshold. What I tell people to do is I tell them to get out a sticky note, slap it on your desk, and write 15115 at the top. And what that 15115 is supposed to remind you of is the weekly, daily, weekly, or monthly time. Daily, weekly, or monthly. So 15 minutes a day, an hour a week, or an hour a month. If the task you are currently doing is taking you more than that amount of time, you should write it down on the 15115 list. Now, the last 5, so 15 minutes a day, an hour a week, or an hour a month, the last 5 is do it 5 times manually.
So, do you have some examples that could fall into these?
Oh, yeah, so many. So email for me was one that was getting put on my 15115, and I started to realize, oh no, it's not just email. There's subcategories. There's proposals I need to respond to. There's proposals I need to send. There's initial discovery calls that I need to follow up on. There's partners that I need to schedule webinars with. There's all these different things. And I started to categorize some of those different tasks. And after I scheduled the webinar 5 times manually, I started to think, wait a second, I might be able to use something like SavvyCal or Calendly, give someone a booking link, and they can select. So I mean, that's a perfect example. Carly Joe, did we like have a phone call where we talked about our openings on our calendars for this call?
We did not.
No, we did not. We automated that, right? There was a booking process. And the cool part was I wasn't even involved. I literally handed that to my assistant and said, go book me for this podcast. And so she went out and knows my calendar and scheduled that for January 2nd.
January 2nd.
We need to rethink our Calendly links, folks.
That's one of the downsides of automating, right? Is it doesn't have that humanish intuition to say, is this the right moment for this to happen for us? Are we going to be in the right mindset? And one of the downsides of delegating was my assistant thinking, oh, yeah, that's his first day back to the office. Is that going to be the best day to do a podcast? And in the end,
this is working out. I really
agreed.
do.
I would agree. I think it is working out. But it is interesting how your preferences don't always transfer. But that's a new set of curriculum or rules that I could add to everything that's going on.
Well, so what are some ways that people can automate if they don't, or like, because you keep talking about your VA, which is great, but some people don't have a VA. So what are some ways that they can automate, and I guess not delegate, but automate and eliminate if they're truly solo right now from like a business operation standpoint?
So I would get out that 15115 list and I would slap that down next to me. And every time I came across a task that was going to come up again, and when I say um, weekly, monthly, daily, I'm really looking for people to look for things that are going to happen again. The automation rabbit hole is a dangerous one. If you go down that rabbit hole on something that really doesn't happen more than like 2 or 3 times a year, you're going to get to the end of it And you might actually automate, but you'll be frustrated because it took you so long to automate it that you're like, oh, I'll never see ROI on this. So that's why I'm having you surface out and pick tasks that are bigger chunks of your time, because there's more ROI opportunity in those. And so in your first go at trying to automate something, you'll have a lot more success going through and pushing on that process. Okay.
Any thoughts on? I mean, let's give a really dumb example. One of the things I spend more than an hour a week on is recording podcasts,
Okay.
which I'm not going to automate nor delegate. Um, so, but obviously that being a kind of a silly example. Any thoughts on how to decide things that maybe
Yeah.
you should think twice about before
Yeah.
delegating or
So
automating?
so there's an amazing book called Buy Back Your Time. And Buy Back Your Time is all about delegation because it's talking about bringing in an assistant or looking at those different pieces. But the podcast, for example, you just gave is one that I wouldn't delegate. And the reason I wouldn't delegate is because one, Joe, I bet it lights you up. Like I bet you like the podcast and it gets you there. And two, it probably makes you money because you have an opportunity to publicize the business and push things out and meet new people who need what you have. Right. So for me, I spend many hours a week podcasting, doing podcasts, recording myself, recording guests, meeting new people. And the reason I don't delegate or eliminate that or automate that is because it lights me up and it makes me money. And so what you're looking for are things that don't light you up that make you money. That's the key. So if we were to add something to 15115, after you've done it 5 times manually, look through the list. And if it doesn't light you up and it makes you money, circle it. And then go down that list of things that don't light you up that make you money and begin to look at ways to automate, delegate, or eliminate. And Carly, the way I would go automate that, I would open up perplexity.ai, which is a really cool search tool. I like it way better than Google. It actually replaced Google for me. Um, I go back to Google when I want to find a link specifically for something. Google's really good at finding the link that I want by whatever I type in. Perplexity is amazing at picking up context. So, for example, you mentioned Cal Newport. I immediately opened up a new browser tab and I typed in Cal Newport while we've been on this podcast. And it went in and it actually searched, looks like 7 different places, including calnewport.com. It looked up Wikipedia, the Deep Life, several different places. And then it gave me a very brief description of who Cal Newport is. But one of the very first things that popped up there, and so literally in less than 10 seconds, I was able to pull out, oh, that's the author of Deep Work, which is why I was able to respond to you. And so what Perplexity does is it searches through that top end of that search page for you and then spits out, here's the answer that you were looking for. So instead of me having to be my own search engine or my own analyzer of a search engine, it analyzes it for me. And so, Carly, what I would say is write the thing down that you want to automate and say, how would I automate? Insert what you're doing. Talk about, how would I automate automatically replying to emails that look like this? Because I'm spending 15 minutes a day responding to these emails. And if I don't respond to them, I don't make any money. Let's say that you're a property manager, right? And you're getting these emails for applications and you're just having to respond to people to say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And it's becoming fairly repetitive and there's some rules around it. I would then go into Perplexity and say, how would I make an automatic reply rule for my email when I get a bunch of emails like this with this context? And then let Perplexity go search and then just keep asking it questions until it gives you something that's like, okay, that's probably worth digging into.
Have you what are the benefits of Perplexity versus like ChatGPT?
So ChatGPT is really powerful in that it has kind of consumed the whole internet, but it generally has a delay. Now, they have recently introduced a search feature in ChatGPT that is trying to compete with what Perplexity is doing. Perplexity has been doing that for years now already. And so they're way far ahead of the game in terms of like, take the first page of Google, scrape all of those pages, and give me back a relevant response. ChatGPT is getting there, and I bet they'll catch up. at some point here in the near future. But what I found is when I'm trying to debug something on my computer, or I'm trying to find relevant information right now about how to automate something, I like Perplexity a little better because it gives me the most recent information that's readily available. So if I'm shopping for something, if I'm hunting for like, nuggets right now, if I'm looking at like the corpus of all knowledge and I want to talk to Data from Star Trek, to go back to Joe, we can actually like drive in the car right now and like actually pretend Data is sitting next to us, and like you can turn on ChatGPT and just have a conversation with advanced voice mode. I mean, it's
That's crazy.
unreal what's possible now in terms of what's there. So if I were trying to have this conversation about like how to automate things, open up ChatGPT and say, pretend you're Will Christensen, because there's hundreds of hours of me talking online. Pretend you're Will Christensen from Data Automation and walk me through how to automate XYZ process. And it'll go through and give you some decent ideas. And then you've got to go push on those ideas and figure out, what was right and where it hallucinated, because it's still hallucinating in lots of situations.
Yeah.
But that's where I would go is ChatGPT, Perplexity, and you've got Gemini and Claude that are also really powerful. Claude's generally better at writing and coding. Gemini, I'm still not sure why it's not as good at. I don't know. It's. I've heard lots of people say, "Oh no, it's really good for this specific use case or scenario." I personally am still sending stuff to Gemini. Still have not been impressed with the responses that I'm seeing yet. So I'm still testing it. Google's going to catch up there. They're not idiots, but they're definitely not competing right now from what I'm seeing.
Oh, fascinating. Well, so I want to circle back to the VA thing because you are not our first guest to talk about the benefits of having a VA, especially as a solopreneur. It doesn't have to break the bank and yada yada yada. But you were talking about the things that like don't light you up, or that maybe don't light you up but make you money. So
Yep,
you still want to
got it.
keep them, but there's also a lot of perfectionists out there, or
Oh my
this is my
gosh.
baby. I mean, I can't imagine that when you handed off your entire inbox to somebody, you were like, this feels comfortable. Like,
Oh no, it still doesn't feel comfortable sometimes. Like this morning, I actually I'm laying there in bed and my alarm went off and I was like, what am I supposed to be doing this morning? I looked at my calendar last night before I went to bed, but I had a meeting that was before this one that got canceled and I didn't know about it because, I was asleep. Um, so I got up and I was like, oh, I guess I'll have to go check my email. And so it's funny because like routinely checking my email, been years. Randomly checking in, spot moments like this one where I was trying to see what was going on. Totally, right? Um, yeah, it's super uncomfortable to let go of things inside the business. Dan Martell said 80% as good as you is 100% freaking awesome because you didn't have to do it. So letting it go is difficult, but mind-numbingly valuable for the business to grow.
And I want to make a point too that, at least for me, because I'm not necessarily good. I'm good at some things and I'm not very good at a lot of things. And I get somebody like Carly to come along and do the marketing, or I've got a basically what's a VA who's way more organized than me. And it's not 80% as good. It's 120% as good, maybe more.
Yeah.
And
Well, and there are probably things, Joe, like that aren't 120% because I'm with you there. I've got things that so I brought in what we call an apprentice, and she's in charge of all the finance and the recruiting and all of that kind of stuff. And I brought her on just super young, hungry entrepreneur. And by the way, Carly, anybody who's listening to this, I will do a free time audit. My time audits normally are only 15 minutes. I'll extend that to a half an hour for anybody who jumps on this call. And for 30 minutes, and I'll even bet you a $50 Amazon gift card that I will blow your mind on that 30-minute call. So like if I don't at the end, just let me know you didn't blow my mind, and I'll send you a $50 Amazon gift card. That's how confident I am in the different tools and things that I have available. And at the end of that call, I'm going to give you a good idea of some of the things that you probably should be automating, delegating, or eliminating out of what you're doing. And my goal there would be for you to have the aha moment that's like, maybe a VA is the right move, or maybe an apprentice is the right move, or maybe I just need to hire a coach to help me focus. because I'm not eliminating enough out of my schedule. So which step is the right one? Automate, delegate, or eliminate? I don't know, but we can probably get to the bottom of it in a 30-minute call and kind of see where that's going.
How often do you see social media as a time suck where it's like, just
Oh
get
my
off
gosh.
Reels or get off whatever?
If you don't have, so I was actually like 2 or 3 minutes late for this call. It was totally Facebook. So I'm totally, and if you guys ever watched the Holderness Family on
Yes.
YouTube, oh
Love
my
them.
Yes.
gosh, the Holderness Family, like his song about ADHD just touches me to my core because I've got it. I understand. I'm there. I'm with you. Um, eh, I totally got sucked in. I have a timer on my phone, and all newest phones, so Samsungs, Apples, I even think the Pixel. Oh yeah, no, I know the Pixel has it as well because they have a Google well-being thing. They have a feature where if you look for like app timer limit in your settings, you can go to that specific app, you can give yourself a timer, and mine is 10 minutes. I literally will not allow myself. And now, can I go in and change the settings and give myself as much time as I want? And does that happen? I don't know, once every 2 weeks? Yeah, it does. But outside of once every 2 weeks, where I spend an hour on social media, I spend 10 minutes, maybe 20, because it allows me to click a button that says, "Give me another 10 minutes for today." And that has been my way of corralling my ADHD into only allowing me to doom scroll for 20 minutes. Um, and I found that giving myself the ability to, and I tried lots of different times. I tried an hour, I tried a half an hour, I tried 5 minutes, and 10 minutes was like, okay, my body will handle this. So what I would say to you is social media is definitely a time suck. It is definitely something that should be limited. I found that completely eliminating it didn't work for me, because I've got connections there that I want to maintain. I've got Facebook Marketplace I want to be going on and searching for something random. I've got a post in my community where I want to say, hey, does anybody know where I can find an art teacher for my daughter? Like I've got different things that I want to be able to do in there. But yeah, limiting or eliminating that from a, binge session, I think is really powerful.
So, Will, I'm this is a curiosity question. If it's too personal, you can tell me to stop asking. But what all do you automate, delegate, and delegate? And then where do you end up spending your time? What is valuable that you prioritize during the day?
Great question. So, what I figured out was as you're building a company, there are two different sides, technically three if you count the marketing aspect of things. But I found that marketing and sales at the beginning kind of get put together, right? So, you've got one side of it, which is the marketing and sales side. And then the other side of it is the fulfillment. And that's like if you really boil it down, kind of here's a business in its two parts. You've got, acquiring people to get do business with, and then you've got doing the business. And then they fall off and you repeat the cycle, right? What I've discovered is that you generally fall in love or you're good at one of those two sides of the equation. And so I am spending all of my time on the acquiring new business part, of what's there, and maybe 20%, 10% of my time on coaching people inside the business, or coaching mentors who have apprentices, and we're kind of guaranteeing that relationship to succeed and do all of those different things. And so um I spend most of my time teaching, coaching, podcasting, talking to new people, educating them about Entrepreneur's Apprentice, and selling our service, which is helping people automate, delegate, or eliminate, or clone themselves as entrepreneurs.
Have you also found that all of these processes and your principles have freed up your free time as well? Like that you can now actually spend time with your family and spend time with your friends because of all of this? Because we try to, as a solopreneur, you could work around the clock.
You don't have to put it down. That's one of the most dangerous things about a solopreneur is because you walk around the house and you think, man, if I don't make that stuff happen, we're gonna lose this. like like the mortgage won't get paid and we'll live somewhere not here. So even your house becomes a reminder that you need to make that you go in and you go to your kids' dance recital and you think, man, how are we going to pay for this dance recital, these dance lessons, if we don't make what? So everything reminds you, like, the business has got to run, the business has got to run, the business has got to run. For me, living by these principles, digging in, learning, listening to books like crazy, um, understanding kind of what's there, gave me some of the power that I needed to trust my systems. So I could say, how many connect calls did you have this week? For me, my business runs on connect calls. Connect calls are where I talk to people who interact with my on ICP, my ideal customer profile, or who are my ICP. And if I've interacted with at least 5 or 6 of those a week, the business is going to be fine. I've set up systems for the rest of everything that's going on, including follow-up calls and even the $50 challenge that I gave earlier. Those are all part of those systems that I've created. So I know as long as I've got 5 to 6 of those, and I also know that I can take a week and a half off. So, like, the Friday before Christmas was my last day of work, and today's my first day back. And during that time frame, I didn't check my email. I had my WhatsApp open so that if something urgent went down, they could get a hold of me. Had 1 or 2 clients reach out, and we didn't do work. We actually let go of some of what's there, but it is wildly difficult to be focused like that.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, well, I feel like I could talk to you all day about just becoming more and more efficient. Email aside, processes aside, maybe not processes, but what would be the one piece of advice you would give a new solopreneur who wants to make their business and their lives more efficient?
So if I am a solopreneur, I probably so the first thing I would tell you is go read The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. It is probably the most amazing story-based book, and I find that the one of the reasons that I love what they've done is they kind of follow the stories of a couple of small solopreneurs. One that I think she was a real client of his. Um, that the book is based on, where it talks about this woman who fell in love with the idea of making pies. And it talks about 3 different types of people: technicians, managers, and entrepreneurs. And generally speaking, solopreneurs are technicians. They have become excellent at their trade. For me, it was automating stuff. Right. And then it was like, maybe I should go do this for other people. And then I got out there and started doing it for other people. I started to hate it because it just was more busy work and more busy work. And then I started to realize, wait a second, this needs systems. The way this is going to grow, the way this is going to succeed, is if we actually lean into some of the systems. So I would tell you to go read The E-Myth. Would be the first thing I would tell you to do. The second thing I would tell you to do is get out that 15115 list and start writing down all the things that are taking you more than 15 minutes a day, more than an hour a week, or more than an hour a month, and put a tally mark next to them: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Only then can you evaluate, does this light me up? No. Does it make me money? Yes. Because if you've done it 5 times, you then can answer those 2 questions. That's why you have to do it 5 times. Does it light me up? Like, after the 5th time, you might be like, oh, you know what? That actually does light me up. I figured out how to do the annoying part of it. And then I would start circling those things that were automatable or delegatable or eliminatable. And I would start looking for people to help me evaluate what that looked like. First, I would go to ChatGPT and I would start asking questions about, here's my list. You can take it, you can actually snap a picture of that 15115 list and say, okay, I just did the 15115 thing from Will Christensen from Data Automation. This is my list. I've circled the things that make me money that don't light me up. Which one should I focus on first? And it can actually, as long as your handwriting's halfway decent, can actually read. If you hand it to your wife and she's not going to be able to read it, or your husband and he's not going to be able to read it, ChatGPT is going to have a problem too. So the good handwriting versus the bad handwriting. As long as you've done a decent job, that's what I would do. Is go in from that perspective. In terms of apps I might install, um, I mean, if you're not using ChatGPT, that's where I would go first, and pay for the $20 a month and get the advanced voice mode and just start talking to it about your business. Tell it who's the best small business coach you've ever heard of in the world. Okay, pretend you're that person right now. I'm going to tell you about my small business that I'm building, and let's just have a conversation about what I can do better. You'll be shocked when you give it that lens of like, go through these eyeballs, how much it can do to support you.
It's so wild. Well, that is such great advice. So I'm going to ask another question about advice that may not be your own, but we ask all of our guests this question. What is your favorite quote about success?
Oh my gosh. My favorite quote about success. Honestly, the thing that comes to me is, and it kind of goes back to efficiency. David Allen is a fantastic author. He wrote a book called Getting Things Done.
We talk about this I talk about this all the time. So
love it, Joe. Like you're gonna have to come on my podcast. I have a podcast called Automation Hunter, and I'm curious as to some of the things you're using because
okay.
it sounds like we think alike, but we also think differently. So I love running into people that hate Slack because, well, then you figured out other ways to go through those different processes, and there's
I'd
probably
love to
apps
walk you through it.
we can
You
Love to
swap.
walk you
guys
through
So
it.
are meant to be best friends. And just be a fly on the wall between you two. You have to meet at some point.
it's definitely got to happen. So um I would say like the quote, honestly, getting things done, like just the sheer title is kind of what flows to me there. Um the thing that I love about David Allen is the way that he separated the idea of the to-do list and the inbox.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like if we go back to that very first principle I mentioned of like, do not use your email as a to-do list. If you read his book, you will never do that again because you'll walk away and say, oh my gosh, like I can't allow other people to have access to the priority project list that I need to be tackling. And so for me, um, I would say, what does success look like? Work backwards, choose your next steps. Like it's amazing what's possible when you begin to understand some of these principles.
Great advice. Well, Will, where can people find you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. So equityhammer.com is my kind of parent company brand. And if you go to equityhammer.com, you'll see there's several different projects I'm involved with. There's a quick contact form that you can reach out and we can connect those different dots. I believe the time audit is up there already. If it is not up there already, it will be. I have a to-do list that I use on a like electronic ink notepad. And so I'm just writing myself a quick note to make sure that the 15115 guarantee $50 thing is on my website. So you could book me for that as well. But yeah, that's probably the best place to find me, equityhammer.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. It's just William Christensen. And if you type in William Christensen data automation, I come right up to the top.
Wonderful. Well, I feel so inspired after this. I feel like I could just trim the fat of some of my to-dos and ready to rock the new year. So, Will, thank you so much for coming on the show.
This was a lot of fun.
And
Yeah.
listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, we would love that 5-star review. We'd love it if you'd hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. And we will see you next time on The Aspiring Solopreneur.